Hello everyone and welcome back to the Migration and Upgrade Centre. My name's Stephen Ball and I'm joined here again by our senior migration experts Al Manarino.
Hello.
And Mary Kelly.
Hi.
So last time out we looked at the top 5 things to consider when converting your applications, and in this video we're going to be talking about theory and putting it into practice as we migrate an old pre-Unicode application that uses the BDE up to RAD Studio 10.4. Now, like many people converting their applications, the key driver here is to show how to get the application ready to support a 64-bit version of Windows 10. And we're going to be covering kind of the warts and all as we go through this move. So the application we have chosen to look at is the Mast App demo from Delphi 2007. Now, the reason we've chosen this is it provides a number of elements to look at as we go through the migration, but also it's not too big, that makes it easy enough to follow in a webinar format. So let's have a quick look around the Mast App from Delphi 2007. Okay, so here is the Mast App, or the Marine Adventures application, and pretty old school. So let's have a quick look around it. So Al, Mary, what's the first things you notice here?
Well, it looks like we're going to need to check out the icons on Windows 10. I think we're going to see that as we're moving forward, that we're going to see a change in the resolution support in Windows 10 due to high DPI. This is going to, I'm imagining, make the icons look a little bit smaller on most machines.
Yeah, I'm also thinking we might need to check out what's behind the help button here. Microsoft changed the help system a number of years ago, so that could be an external dependency and something that we might need to modify. So let's kind of quick, I'm just going to search for help file here. Yeah, we can see here this is a HLP file. So that'll definitely need updating.
And Stephen, as you mentioned earlier, this application is a non-Unicode English-only application. So I believe I recall seeing about 91 strings used in this application. So the good news is, in many cases, legacy applications like this may just migrate from non-Unicode to a Unicode version of Delphi with little or no changes at all. So we'll see what happens as we get into the migration, if we need any Unicode changes at all.
Okay, great. I'm just going to have a quick look at a couple of the other areas in here. So the browser is opening this form here. BR customer order parts. Yeah, we can definitely improve the size of that and maybe a bit of anchoring and stuff in here to kind of clean that up. In fact, let's just go and run this, and probably the quickest way to look through the application is actually to run it here, isn't it?
So here's an example looking at the scroll bars. Another nice place where we can add some UI modernization to make it look more new and more modern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that looks like we're going to have another UI update. We can get some kind of quick usability wins there with the calendar controls with our Win10 calendar views in 10.4.
Agreed. Let's look at the code behind the date picker here quickly. So that was on this form here. And let's go and have a look at the date picker. Okay, yeah, there seems to be quite a few string to date conversions going on here, where we haven't had kind of a nice control to work with in the past. So that, again, seems to be setting just some problems in the form, so that's going to be really easy to retrospectively, update and put back in. Okay, so let's have a look further around. We've obviously got data being used quite a bit. Let's have a quick look, see what's on the data module here.
Okay, interesting. So on that bottom, that bottom right hand is there's a T data component. And I'm also seeing some T tables and some T queries. So this is the good old BDE, the Borland Database Engine.
Okay, so the database is pointing at the DB demos, which from memory was probably Paradox tables in 2007.
Yeah, I suspect if you opened up the BDE administrator, you would see that it's the a Paradox table pointing at the DB demos. So you are correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's going to fail our 64-bit requirement then, and getting it onto Windows 10. That'll definitely need modernization.
And I've actually been using the InterBase data pump recently to update a lot of our customers from Paradox to InterBase. So that seems like it would be a really sensible path, especially with the runtime-free IB Lite version.
Wonderful, Mary and Stephen. So up to this point, I agree with everything we've been saying on how to migrate off of this Delphi 2007 application to the current Delphi 10.4.
Okay, so I think we're getting a bit of a plan together. I think first things, let's get this code opening in 10.4 without reporting any component errors as we open through the forms. And then let's have a look at getting the Unicode analysis done. The database side of things, we've identified that we need to move up. So let's get that change done straight off the bat. And we know it's all automated with the refine. So let's look at getting that done straight up to FireDAC to start.
So yes, I'll be able to cover that, and we'll be able to show how easy it is to migrate off of the BDE to FireDAC using the included refine utility.
Okay, so if we need to for the initial test, then obviously we can point to the Paradox ODBC driver for initial testing of the database access before we migrate over to InterBase. But I think definitely worth getting it moved over to InterBase, the 64-bit version, so we can fulfill that requirement.
Yeah, and I can pick that up.
Awesome, thanks, Mary. Okay, I'll pick up the help files. I've done some work with that recently, and that just leaves the UI modernization elements that we've picked up along the way.
And I know a good site for getting a lot of those icons at multiple resolutions so that we can swap them in for the modern T-Speed button, which then supports image lists, and I can also sort out the calendar control.
Okay, awesome. Right, great. I think we have a plan. So let's get this code checked in, and then Al, let's fire it over to you.
Thank you. Since Stephen, Mary, and myself will be working together on this code migration from different locations, it's a great idea to upload the project code to a version control system. Delphi has built-in integration with 3 of the most popular version control systems: Git, Mercurial, and Subversion. For our project, we chose to use Git. So here we see our Delphi 2007 Mast App project uploaded to GitHub at this URL. So now using GitHub, we will be able to collaborate and look back at previous versions of our work, and Git will keep track of all of our changes to the code. To get the GitHub project onto our local disk, using the Delphi IDE, we can use File, Open from Version Control. We will select Git, and for the source, we will select our GitHub location, and for destination, we will select an empty folder. So I'll use my Documents folder and a folder called Delphi 2007 Projects. So now when I click OK, we see that the GitHub project gets cloned to our local drive. I will select the project to open, which is our Mast App Delphi project. And here we now see that our Mast App project has been cloned onto our local disk under GitHub version control. So that's great. And now we see the Mast App project in our Delphi 10.4 IDE. So now any changes we make to this code will be logged by Git. So for example, if I select the main.pass, we now have a menu item called Git that allows us to commit and or revert any changes. So all of this is great. Now that we have the Mast App project cloned from GitHub on our local disk, Let's open the Mast app project in Delphi 10.4 Sydney and see what happens. The first error we get is error reading from Mast data. Class T database not found. So let's click cancel. And the next error again is also class T database not found. We recall that this component T database comes from our data module. This component T database is from the BDE, the Borland database engine. So let's click cancel again. At least we get to have the project open and we can see our main form like this. This Mast app application uses the BDE for data access to local paradox tables. Now with Delphi 10.4, the BDE is not installed by default, but for backwards compatibility, Delphi 10.4 Sydney still includes the BDE as a separate installation. To get the BDE installer for Delphi 10.4 Sydney, you can log into your registered product portal page at my.embarcadero.com using your Embarcadero Developer Network username and password to log in, and then click the Cloud Download icon on the left panel and search for the BDE for RAD Studio 10.4 and download the installer. And run the BDE installer. This will install the BDE runtime units into your Delphi 10.4 IDE. Next, we also want to see and use the BDE design time components like the missing T database component in our Delphi 10.4 IDE. So we also need to install the BDE design time package for the BDE components. To do this, from the Delphi 10.4 IDE, we select Component, Install Packages, click Add, and we browse to the bin folder of our 10.4 IDE installation, and we search for and we select the package called DCL BDE 270, and we click Open. Now when we look at the install design packages, we now see we have the Embarcadero BDE DB components listed as one of the install design packages. And if we click the Components button, we see the BDE install components, including our T database component. So now let's try and reopen the Mast app project and see if we resolved our missing class T database not found error. But now we get a new error. Network initialization failed, permission denied, file C, pdoxusers.net, directory C:. So what does this error mean, and how do we resolve this error? This error comes from needing to set the path for the netdir for paradox from the BDE. To resolve this error, let's first create a new folder. Let's call it C::BDE share. And this will be the location of the application's network control file from the error message, the pdoxusers.net file. Next, to set the path for the network directory, we run the BDE administration utility, and we click on Configuration, Drivers, Native, and Paradox, and we need to set the netdir property to the BDE share folder we just created. And we browse to our C::BDE share folder and click OK. So now our netdir for our paradox native driver is set to our C::BDE share folder. And now we can click Object, Apply, save all edits to paradox. All BDE applications must be restarted for changes to take effect. That's fine. And we can say Object Exit. This should now resolve our network initialization failed error we were getting. Let's now restart our Delphi 10.4 Sydney IDE and open the Mast app project and see if we resolved all of our open errors. Click on the Mast app project. So now we see our Delphi 2007 Mast app open in Delphi 10.4 with no open errors. So all of this is great so far. Now that we can get our Delphi 2007 project to open in Delphi 10.4 without any open errors, let's try and build a project and see if we get any build errors. From the project manager, I'll select my Mast app, right-click, and select build. So for the build, we see we have 2 warnings and 2 errors. The first error we see is undeclared identifier short date format. This is a common error you will get upgrading from older Delphi versions to the new Delphi versions. In the older Delphi versions, before XC3, this variables declaration was in the system.sysutils unit, but starting with Delphi XC3, those variables were moved into the T format settings record. The easy fix for this error is to replace short date format with format settings.short date format, since format settings is a global variable of the T format settings type declared in sysutils, which have these variables. So if we now select format settings, right click, find declaration, we see that T format settings comes from the system.sysutils unit. So now we can make the same change to these next 3 short date format variables. So instead of calling short date format, we will call format settings short date format. So that should resolve any undeclared identifier error with short date format. So now let's try another project build and see if we get any build errors. So now, as we see, we have 0 build errors, so that is great. Let's now look again at the data module for this application. As we discussed earlier, this Delphi 2007 Mast app application is an order entry system that uses the Borland database engine, BDE, for data access to paradox tables. So this application interacts with the orders table, the customer table, the vendors table, and the parts table. As we discussed, the BDE has been deprecated for the last 20 years, so we really need to migrate off of the BDE to a newer, more performant supported data access layer that supports Windows 10 64-bit and modern security standards. Looking at the Data Explorer tab, we see we have DB Express and FireDAC as data access layers. Since the BDE is deprecated, and Embarcadero advises not to use the BDE for any new projects, since the BDE is no longer supported, and the BDE was never tested or certified to run on the newer operating systems like Windows 10 64-bit, and the BDE will not support Unicode, so Embarcadero's advice is to move off of the BDE to a newer, more performant data access component that is certified and supported by Embarcadero. Today, our newest and most performant universal data access components are called FireDAC. The good news is Delphi now includes a utility called Refind that will automatically migrate both your Delphi code and forms from the BDE to FireDAC. So this means you do not need to spend any time or effort to migrate off of the BDE to FireDAC. So now let's take a look at how to migrate our Delphi 2007 BDE application to a Delphi 10.4 application using FireDAC for the data access layer. As we read in the doc wiki for Delphi 10.4 Sydney, there is a section called Migrating BDE Applications to FireDAC, and the BDE application migration topic explains how to run the RAD Studio tool called Refind in order to replace the BDE terms with their FireDAC counterparts. The Refind tool is located in your RAD Studio bin directory. The Refind command line tool is based on regular expressions that can process arbitrary text files for replacing occurrences of certain text patterns, like, for example, references to units in uses clauses and types of components in class declarations from the BDE to FireDAC. So the refine tool can take as a parameter the location of the rules file that tells the refine tool how to replace the different BDE references to FireDAC. And the actual migration of Delphi source code and forms is just a matter of invoking the refine tool and passing the regular expression file. In this case, it'll be the FireDAC migrate BDE text file that will modify all of our .pas files and all of our DFM files. Looking at the regular expression file we will use for our BDE to FireDAC migration, called FireDAC migrate BDE.txt, and this file is included in your Delphi installation, we see how it will search for and replace migrate BDE syntax to the FireDAC equivalent. So for example, a BDE T database will get migrated to a T FireDAC connection. A BDE T table will get migrated to a T FireDAC table, and a BDE T query will get migrated to a FireDAC T FD query, plus all the other BDE terms will get migrated to their FireDAC equivalents. So now let's look at doing the actual migration. I want to keep the original source code for the BDE version of the Delphi 2007 MAST app application. So the first thing I did is I created a new folder called FireDAC_MAST app. So this folder will contain the FireDAC version of the MAST app application. Next, I'll copy all the files from my Delphi 2007 MAST app BDE application folder to my new FireDAC MAST app folder. So here we see all 71 files were copied. So here I am in command line in my FireDAC_MAST app folder. And from here, I can run the refine utility on the MAST app PAS files and DFM files using the search and replacement of Perl regular expression text patterns in the FireDAC_migrate_BDE.txt file, and this will apply the refined specific migration rules to our PAS and DFM files. So let's execute the refine command now. We see it's doing its processing, and it modified all the needed PAS and DFM files to convert our BDE application to FireDAC. So that is how quick it can do it. So now let's open up our newly created MAST app FireDAC version of our application, and we'll look at the data module and see what it looks like. So here we see our Delphi 2007 BDE application migrated from the BDE to use FireDAC components. For example, what used to be our BDE T database component is now a T FireDAC connection component. What used to be a BDE T table component is now a FireDAC T FD table component. And what used to be a BDE T query component is now a FireDAC T FD query component. So that's how easy it is to migrate off of the BDE to use FireDAC by just running the refine utility. So all of this is great. Now, since we are still under Git version control, let me commit these changes to our Git repository. So selecting the MAST app exe, right-click, selecting Git. Let me select commit from the repository root. So here we see all the files we have modified in our MAST app project. Let me first add a comment. Migrated the BDE to FireDAC, and now let me commit these changes. So that's done. So now our GitHub repository has been modified without changes.
So I went ahead and downloaded the MassApp application from GitHub after I got the notification that it had been moved from the BDE to FireDAC. So now I can go into my data module, and that should open up and see that I have my FireDAC components that have now replaced the BDE components. So now we could always use FireDAC to connect to our Paradox database through ODBC, and I could keep the Paradox tables when I'm building or upgrading the application. But let's say you want to get away from Paradox or DBase or any of the other older databases and make the move to some SQL database. In this case specifically, I am going to switch to the InterBase database. Now, InterBase is a highly scalable, powerful, embeddable, and encryptable database that works across several different platforms, including iOS and Android. Something only a few databases out there do while running natively on these platforms. It's extremely lightweight and has a tiny footprint, so you can imagine how quick it is by not bogging down your system. It also has a near zero administration, so you can deploy it and you don't need a DBA to consistently maintain it. As far as moving our application from Paradox to InterBase, there's this nifty little tool here called the InterBase Data Pump. It's from a group called Clever Components, and it's going to take any ADO, BDE, or InterBase data source and actually migrate it to our targeted InterBase databases. So it's a free download, it's freeware, and we can take a look here, see the steps, and then download from there. So once you have the InterBase data pump open, you're going to go ahead and select the database and then also set up all of your properties. So in this case, we're using the BDE and we're using the DB demos. It automatically popped up on my machine, but in the event that you have other data sources from the BDE, you can go through and click them. You have your username and password, which typically are already inserted anyway. You'll test the connection and make sure that it's passed. Then you can go through and set up any of the properties specifically, so relating to the pump. Maybe you need to disable any of your triggers. Maybe you need to empty out the destination tables before the pumps, or even updating generators. You can also go through the string field properties and building the relationships, typically case insensitive fields and table comparisons. Now we're going to go through and choose our destination database properties. Now, in some cases, if you've already created the InterBase database before this, then you can just toggle through and specifically choose where that database is. If you don't have a database already created for it, you can go into IB console, click on the database, either right-click on this database and create the database, or you can click up at the top of the menu, create database, go ahead and create the database with the title that you want. In this case, I'll be using DB demos. You can go through with the options such as changing the size of the page, or also adding in something like embedded user authentication for additional security purposes. You can choose to save the password or even use the alias for database connections. Now we can choose our dbdemos.ib file. We can go ahead and test that connection, and it has passed. Now we're going to want to build out a SQL script for the source so that as we're moving from Paradox to InterBase, it creates the schema script that we just install then into InterBase. So we're going to go ahead and build our SQL script. It's going to save the script to some file, in this case the convertbde.sql. It will rewrite over this additional text file that I already had from another migration. It'll go through and match up with the dialect, any specific character default sets that you may set. And it'll also create the generators for auto-incremented fields. You can choose to add them in manually, so you can add and go through any of the tables that you have and specifically pull in those fields. or you can also just let InterBase Data Pump create those generators for you. So all of these fields more or less match up as a one-to-one with what InterBase is looking for between the migration from the BDE to InterBase. So we can go ahead and click Start, all fine, and it opens up this converted BDE script. And as you can see, it really just creates the schema for the entire script. So now we can go into our IB console, into the interactive SQL, and we'll be able to add this query, load the entire script, and run the script from there, so that when we have our database created, we'll be able to see that all of the schema has now matched up, and we've successfully moved the schema from our FireDAC database to our InterBase database. There's still no data yet as we haven't actually used the data pump portion, but at least now we've completed half of our database migration. From there, we can click close and go into the order. Now you can grab the definitions, and then from there, it gives you these nice 3 steps where you can then build the relationships. So you can either choose to do this manually, or you can build the relations and it will specifically look at each of these and make sure that as close to matching between the InterBase and FireDAC tables as there can be in terms of data types. You can also do the exact same thing using the generators. And moving on to step 3 with the data pump, I'll go ahead and click Start. I'm going to get this message about the destination database is in forced writes mode. This is just because my IB server is currently set to that. So it's going to make the pump a little bit slower. I can go ahead and open up my InterBase database IB console. In the process of that, I can go ahead and log into my database, and it should be just about done by now. So I'm going to go ahead and see if my data was migrated, and it looks like all of my data for all of my tables, let's check up a couple more, has actually been migrated over. So now I can go back into RAD Studio or my Delphi application, and I can actually build the connection instead of with my FireDAC database, connect it to my InterBase database. So I can go into my driver ID, change that up, change the location from a demo app to, let's see, migrations here, my DB demos, using my username and password. I can test the connection. OK, can click OK. All right, let's go ahead and run our application. And we'll see here, no runtime errors for our database. So FireDAC said, yes, I can connect to InterBase. Let's go ahead and click through parts. And we can see that we're now pulling data directly from the InterBase database rather than the FireDAC tables that we were before. We've successfully run the application as a 32-bit, and we've decided that we also want to migrate to 64-bit as well. So our first step is to expand out our target platforms and double-click on the Windows target platform. Now, because the 32-bit application also resides in the project folder, we're going to have to go back into our project options and recreate or create a new path for our 64-bit application. Now I currently have the output directory and the unit output directory set to the folders that I want, in this case Win64 and debug. If I save that, I can run the application in 64-bit, and we can now see that the application is loaded and is now running in 64-bit. We can then go into the FireDAC Mast app, and we can see that the Win64 folder's been created, and our application along with all the DCUs have been added to that folder.
Okay then, let's have a look at the help. So the help section here in the app, we click on it, it opens up the help, and this goes directly to the contents. We can browse through, there's links and bits in there, that all seems to be working. We've got contents, which just has the general list page here. So let's go and have a look at the actual help file, or let's search for the help file within the document, in the code here. So let's just go and search for help file. And we can see the help file is set up as the application starts running here, just after the initialize, before the main forms are created up. So the forms are then referencing to the application help file rather than having to specify it on the form level. And here just using the HLP file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a copy of that, which I've already done actually, and I've copied it over here to my Windows 10 VM. So here we can see we're running Windows 10. Now if I try to run the old help on Windows 10, it's going to open up a web browser and it's going to tell us something along the lines of help's not supported, giving us an error message. So we need to get this sorted. What we can do, however, we can quickly convert this to the new CHM format. So I've had a quick look around. HelpEndDoc is just one of many products out there. They do a personal edition, which the licensing here allows for evaluation purposes, but not for commercial use. So we're just going to evaluate that, make sure it's working, and then if we need it, then €99, without having to worry about any of the source or anything else for the help, we can get it converted pretty quickly. So let's just go into EndDoc here and create a new project and create an empty project. And I'm going to import in the help file from our desktop. So that's pretty quick and easy. We can see that we've then got all the contents showing here. So one thing I do know from previous use of this kind of thing is we just need to just check the format of the paragraphs here. It used to be kind of points, but we need to make sure it's at least single spacing. And the reason for that is just with different resolutions on Windows 10, it's much better to have a specific line spacing rather than traditional font size. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and do those on each of those pages, and then we'll come back to the project. Okay, so I've been through and formatted the paragraphs now. Let's go ahead and generate the help file, and we need to generate a CHM version. And there we are. And if we go and open up the file location here, we can see we now have a new help file generated. And let's open that up and just check that. That looks good. We can see we've got a nice table of contents. The stuff's all readable, and it navigates through. That's done a great job of getting that converted. Okay, so we now have a help file. Whilst the other guys are working on the other parts of the program, I've been working in parallel. Just going to take my help file and I'm going to make sure I can get it to run. Just like any external or third-party component, first thing to do is test it, make sure we can get it working. So let's go ahead into RAD Studio now. We're going to create a new VCR Forms application. Now if we just quickly skip back to the master app demo here, there we are, main form. The help here is calling help command. So let's just go and copy that across and put a button down. Now help contents here is declared. That's great. So we've got, that's pointing at 3, which seems to be the same on back here as well. Okay, good. The other thing we need to just check is the help file, where the help file is getting set. So if we go search help file, We can see that's getting set just before the application starts here in the main source. Okay, so let's just go ahead and I'm going to copy that and jump back to our VM and to our project. And if we select the project, press Ctrl V, we can go back to the source here. Let's just go set the help file. Now the help file is changed to CHM. Now, as I build this application for the first time, it's not going to be pointing at the folder, or the source code isn't going to be in the help file is not going to be in the folder. So let's just go ahead and save all of this, and we'll just make a temporary folder here called help test. And call it help test app. And I'm just going to go hit compile. Now I'm going to use debugging because it's simple if we have any issues. So let's just go ahead and we can show this in Explorer. Here's the Win32 debug. There's the test application. Now the application is expecting the help file to be in that directory. So I'm going to take the application file for the help file, sorry, and put that in here. That's master app.chm. So master app.chm. So let's go ahead and run now, and we should hopefully. Okay, well we've hit an error. So this is one of the key things that Al mentioned about in his top 5 things, is checking for runtime errors. We made a change. Does it work? Well, we got it. We know the help file works. We just opened it and explored it. But the unable to find a table of contents is actually pretty simple to solve. We need to stay just here, and we need to add into the uses for the application that uses HTML help viewer, because the CHM format is basically a HTML format. So let's go ahead and run. And now the app's working. Great. We've got a help coming up. And the help works directly from here. Great. So tested. We've got it working. We know that we need to update this one line of code, put the new help file in place, and we should then be ready just to check to make sure the rest of the help context is working and in place as it was before.
We've gotten to the point in our migration process where we're wanting to update the UI and give it a more modern look and feel, such as adding Windows 10 styling, or even being able to take advantage of new Windows 10 features such as high DPI on multiple monitors. With Windows 10 UIs, they need to be able to scale according to the DPI of the target monitor. And when you have images or other graphical elements that aren't scaled properly, they can look blurry, too small, or even too large in some cases. So during our initial planning meetup, we discussed some of the things that it looked like right off the bat we could change. So the first thing that we're going to change is the icons on these T-speed buttons. They look a little bit outdated, and we want to give them a more modern look and feel. Now, if I go ahead and I run this application, we can see right off the bat that there's definitely an issue with the sizing of the images and other graphical elements within the application. I'm running a machine that happens to have 2880 by 1800 for my screen resolution, so the images that we have here are quite small. So it's almost impossible to tell what the little wrenches are here under parts if I wasn't aware of what they were above. So that's going to be the first thing that we go through and change. With RAD Studio 10.4 Sydney, you're able to include some scaling high DPI multi-resolution images in your VCL applications. And you do this by using 2 specific components, the T image collection component and the T virtual image list. When paired together, you're able to load multiple resolutions of the exact same image into the image collection here. And then the image list holds the set of images from the image source itself. The image list holds a set of images that are then sourced from this image collection and then presents them at a specific size, say 16 by 16 or 48 by 48. Now the images are then smoothly resized and scaled, and the image list's actual presentation resolution is then changed based on the DPI of the target machines. So there's this great website called Android Asset Studio that is, as listed, a collection of tools that easily generate assets such as launcher icons. In this case, we're going to look at the launcher icons. Now, one of the cool parts about this is that it'll take an image, it'll take clip art or even text, and it will actually create them at different screen resolutions. So for instance, 16 by 16, maybe 48 by 48, 72 by 72, and it'll actually create them so that you can download them as the pre-packaged resolution, so that when you want to add them to projects, you don't have to worry about how an image is going to look, if it's going to be blurry versus kind of clean and crisp. Moving back into our image collection list, I'm going to go ahead and show the image collector editor. So I can just go here and click on add, and I can go through each of these, and you'll see here that the icons show up under selected images as different resolution sizes. So as I add in more, you can see they're matching up with the name for each of these icons. So I've got a 72 by 72, 48. I'll go ahead and just add in the rest of these real quick. Now that we've added in all of our icons, you can see here that we have as small as 48 by 48 all the way up to 192. Now, if I go ahead and click OK, then for close specifically, since that's the exit, I'm going to go ahead and set the virtual image list to the image collector 1. I can go ahead and click on the image list editor, and I can choose to add from the image collection, specifically the icon exit. And once I add that icon exit, it's got multiple different sizes here as the selected image. I can click OK to that, and then I can go up here to my speed button close, and down under images I can choose that virtual image list and whatever the icon specifically is listed at as the image list. Now when I go ahead and run the application, we can then see that the icon was changed. It no longer looks as small as the other icons that I have listed under those T-speed buttons, and it's been scaled properly. So if I have a larger screen resolution, it'll scale properly to that. Now I'll go ahead and do the same thing with the rest of the buttons. So if I right click, I already went ahead and added all of the 5 icons that I will be replacing. They all have the same pixel size, so no variation there. You can go ahead and click OK. Now going into the virtual image list, I can go ahead and add the rest of them. So I can say select all, OK, and can click OK again. And now through each of the parts, I can actually go through to the images. I'll get rid of my messages down here. I can go through to the images, add the virtual image list, and choose for each one of them. So for new order, we'll choose new order. For browse, we'll choose the search. And then for parts, we can use list. So we've now been able to update each of the icons. So if we go ahead and run the application again, then we can see that the icons themselves are very crisp and clean, and they also are scaled properly to the size for the rest of the application. Now, if we move into browse, there was one other section that we really wanted to work on, which was defining of the calendar range. So this calendar looks quite old and outdated. So we're going to go ahead and replace it with the T calendar view that we recently added to Delphi. So we'll go ahead and close out and open up our pickdate.pass file. So we're going to expand out the form a little bit so that we can see a side-by-side comparison of the calendar view with the current calendar that we have listed out here. So from this calendar, as we can see, it seems like it's a little bit more outdated, while the T calendar view was actually designed for Windows 10. So it gives it a more modernized look, like you would expect from a Windows 10 application. So we're just now going to remove the components from the older calendar set, and we then will also change a little bit of the code in the back end because a few of the procedures and components will no longer be there. We'll just have to make a few changes there. So the cancel still stays. The next month, that's actually pre-built into the Win10 T calendar view, and we can get rid of the previous as it's also located there, and the title label as well. Now we will just move our buttons down a little bit, and we can then add and resize our T calendar view as well as the form itself. I'll reposition those buttons. We can give it a little bit of spacing up at the top, bring our buttons a little bit more centered there. Now all we have to do is go into our code, and you'll see here that there were a few changes. If we look at the procedures specifically, we no longer have the previous and next month or the calendar change. So we can go ahead and just, I'm going to comment these out so that I can talk with the team about what we want to do next with those, whether we want to keep them in as part of a demo code or change it. So the set date, we're going to change this to calendar view 1, and T calendar view 1 does not have a property called calendar date, but it does have a property called date. We can make the same change here. Calendar view 1, switch that as well to date. We no longer have this procedure, next button, or the change procedure. So I'm just going to go ahead, right click and surround those. And now we should be able to go and build our application. And we now have updated our MassApp application with new icons as well as the Windows 10 calendar.
Okay, so I think we're reaching the end now. But thought it'd be good to have a quick look through the final product and have a look at the differences between the two. So I know, Mary, you've got them on your machine there. So do you want to pull them up and we can have a quick look at the before and the after, so to speak?
Yeah, so this is our new and updated version. And then also got our older version.
Yeah, so the size and the icons looking a lot better.
Yeah, you can definitely see the resolution actually kind of fits with these, so they're, instead of being so tiny.
And if you kind of jump in and out of a couple of the forms there, and
Jump on into new orders, for instance. So you can see here the resolution and kind of sizing of some of the icons as well.
Cool. And was it on the browse that we had the calendar control update done?
Yeah, so on the browse, I'll go ahead and I'll show what it looked like before. This is the old version for the calendar update. So then I went ahead and made a few changes there. Whoops. Back into the browse and then define the query. And move those over so we can see them side by side. You can see here, I just went ahead and kind of switched around the component, just dropped in the calendar view.
So yeah, if you kind of click around on the date at the top there, the year and the month and stuff.
Yeah, you can even click here and go
you get
into the decades this way. I want to go back that far. It's a lot of clicks. Yeah, so I could choose, March 1st to get there, March 1st, 1993. All I have to do is just go up a little bit, March and the 1st, for instance, and it still works exactly the same. You can set the dates at the end. It's a lot easier to get to a further date with our new calendar view rather than going through and clicking that button 100 times to go a decade back.
Yeah, and just kind of nicer usability on it. And obviously, one of the other things that we could have done to go even further then is to actually refactor that form probably out the application completely with the calendar drop down components of it. So yeah, no, pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the help's all working and everything else like that, which it wasn't before. So okay, great.
Yeah,
so cool. So final thoughts in terms of the process. Al.
Well, for me, going through this process, we realize it's really easy to migrate a legacy Delphi 2007, non-Unicode English only application to the current Delphi 10.4. And we saw, getting off of the BDE to a new supported data access layer like FireDAC was pretty easy, running that refined utility. And I'm also going to point out, in this Delphi 2007 non-Unicode English only application, there were 91 string types. So that kind of answers the question. It's a misconception that just because you have 100 strings or 1,000 strings or 1,000,000 strings in your application does not mean you have to make any Unicode changes. It really depends on how you're using the strings in charge in your application. And as we saw in this migration, from our 91 strings, we did not need to make any Unicode changes to migrate a Delphi 2007 app to Delphi 10.4. So all of that was great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very, very smooth. And the external dependencies we've had, we've been able to work through pretty easily. With the refine tools and with the help conversion, even though we didn't have the original help documentation file that was put together, just like the output. So yeah, Mary, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, really, we saw how easy it was to be able to take older kind of styled looking images and actually just kind of very easily move them and have multiple resolutions, so that as screen scale, if you've got 4K, if you've got an older machine, you're really going to get a newer look and feel, and you're going to be able to see that the application's been updated and that it just looks a lot better.
In fact, now we've got to the end. Are you able to change your Windows resolution there? We can maybe show it a bit more extreme. I don't know if it's
Yeah, let me go ahead and just change that resolution. I go ahead.
An application that's running on Windows 10 on a supported certified operating system. In addition to 32-bit application we now have a 64-bit version of the same application.
Yeah, it makes a big difference just having that image list resize and pick out the correct image automatically, and it literally has taken us 10 minutes to kind of put those icons in, and it really does make a huge difference in time. So.
Yeah, it really is. I think the thing that really took the longest amount of time for me was just going through and actually in the Android Asset Studio and figuring out all of the customizations that I wanted to work through. That was probably the longest amount of time that I took to actually get this up and going.
Yeah, and that's a job for the graphic designer most of the time. So, yeah. Okay, pretty cool. Okay, good. So I think there we are. If you are looking at getting your application migrated and move through, hopefully you'll find this a useful example to work through. And you see it's not too scary. If you do get stuck along the way, then obviously there's our Embarcadero professional services on hand to be able to help you and work with you to help with your migration if you need it. So please feel free to reach out to one of our sales team to talk about what we can do to help you along the way if you're worried about making that move. But I think on the whole, the big thing here, we haven't even kind of touched really at adding additional VCL styles into the application and being able to update the additional kind of styles and look and feel, and there's even more that you can do that's very quick and easy to do. But it is just so much quicker and easier and cheaper to be able to migrate your old code up and to take advantage of Windows 10 than it is to kind of worry about what you're going to do, and the risk of kind of losing customers or spending out a lot of money on redeveloping into something else. It's time now just to get on and get yourself converted and get moved up. So on you go.
Excellent.
So happy coding, everyone, and we'll look forward to hearing from you and seeing you again soon. Okay, I've managed to get my mic unmuted this time, which is was always a good start before we start a Q&A session. So should be Stephen Ball here. Al, Mary, can you hear me? Are you guys there?
I can hear you, Stephen. Can you hear me?
Yes. And Mary,
are you on mute or unmuted?
I am unmuted.
Okay, awesome. So guys, we're all here. We're just getting ready to go through all the questions in the Q&A log, so please keep those coming through. Just whilst people are putting their final questions in, I've got a couple of quick questions for you guys before we kind of move into the Q&A. So firstly, which version of Delphi are you actively using? So which version are you currently using on your day-to-day development? I know some of you own newer versions, but really we're after finding out what you're currently using for your development. Okay, so about a third of you still using Delphi 7, third of you on 10.0 and above, and a number of you on 2005, 2007 time, and a few in the XE area. Okay, pretty cool. About 50% of you voted, so we'll give that a little bit more time and then we'll get that closed out. Keith's asking about a link for the replay. You'll get an email out from the GoToWebinar system. The webinar is being recorded, including the Q&A, so that should be available for you afterwards. So yeah, that will be around. Okay, great. And the next question for you is, what's the latest version that you actually own? Which version do you have in your toolkit to use? Yeah, so we had a little bit of fun for the Q&A. Sorry, not for the Q&A, for putting this webinar together. Having to kind of dig back up an old copy of Delphi 7 and a Windows XP machine to run it out on, just to kind of make sure we got the the authenticity of kind of the code sorted out and through. But I'm seeing a couple of comments coming in about enjoying the format, so thank you for those guys, and please do keep the questions coming in just as you're kind of voting in here. So it seems about 70% or so of you are Delphi 10 and above, which is great. So the webinar will be available for replay afterwards, so don't worry too much if there's anything that you missed. But if there's specific links that you want, then please put a message in the Q&A, and we'll get answers back out onto those. Okay, great. Thank you very much for sharing your information about your current versions and what you're working on. It's been really useful, and will certainly help us as we go through some of the Q&A here now. So got a quick question here just around the BDE design time packages. Jason's messaged me here saying he's kind of working through a 300,000 line code app with the BDE and also another database component, and is looking to try and get that updated. So the just a reminder, the BDE, you need to go into the my.embarcadero.com and download the package from there, the installer. And then once you've installed that through, you then should be able to find the package details. I think ours put the specific package, the DLC BDE 270.bpl, into the chat for you there, Jason, as well. So that's a good one to start with. Al, any questions specifically you want to pick up on the question log that have come through?
All right, so so Glenn has a nice legacy large BDE application. So Glenn, the good news is there are many legacy applications out there still using the BDE. And as we mentioned, 20 years ago, we deprecated the BDE, but folks are still using it. So we keep asking folks to move off of the BDE. So to make that migration easier, we did create this nice refined utility that's now inside of Delphi. It works on regular expressions. So we pretty much believe we've covered every possible BDE to FireDAC migration item that can come up. So it's as easy as running this command line utility called refined and give it an *pass for all your Pascal files and *dfm for all of your forms, and then pass it this regular expressions file that we call migrate FireDAC BDE, and within literally a few seconds, it'll migrate all of your BDE names and syntax to FireDAC equivalent. So it should be as easy as that. So if you haven't tried it yet, it's easy enough to do.
Mary, any questions in there specifically that you want to pick up before we kind of just shoot down the list? Anything specifically that's kind of caught your eye?
Just the question about the Windows 10 components appearing okay in Windows 7. They do, as we listed out there, they are implemented in the VCL, so they do have backwards compatibility for Windows 7. And so moving between devices when you're deploying your applications, your users will all see the same thing. It won't be that users on Windows 7 or users on Windows 10 will see different applications.
Okay, I'm just going to hijack that.
One more item on that that refined BDE to FireDAC migration. Every once in a while, we come across some unique case in someone's BDE application that our regular expression file does not know about. In that case, let us know the special case that you see, and we'll have that added to the regular expressions file and send it back to you to make that file more complete for yourself to use and other developers that might need it.
Yeah, I've hijacked one of the thanks messages that's popped through just to put a link there with the refined documentation for modifying the script. So refined, as I was just saying, uses some regular expressions based on Perl scripts, and it's pretty well documented. There's some great stuff to be able to kind of migrate property names. So if a property has changed, and we often see this with third-party components, that third-party component vendors have changed the names of properties over time and refactored, and especially see that with things like Indy and things like that. If you set up a batch file and have your source directory, and then have the first thing you do with the batch files to copy all the files into a new folder, then run the regular expression stuff through refined against that set of files, then open it up, try to compile, find the errors, and then just kind of ditch that folder and reprocess the thing again. You can really save a lot of time using refined to go that route, and it's very, very powerful at adding units in. So if you need to change your property on a class, you can actually change it and also put in there to add into the uses a specific unit that's required for that to be used. So really, really quite powerful. But that's all in that modifying the script link that I just put into the chat.
Great. Let me grab another question from Glenn on speaks about having legacy ANSI version of Delphi. So the good news is for that in the current Delphi 10.4, we did update the ASCII string support that makes moving from a pre-Unicode edition even faster. So in Delphi 10.4, the types like ANSI char and ANSI string were added back into Delphi to make migrating your legacy non-Unicode applications to Delphi 10.4 non-Unicode English-only applications easier now, because it'll understand ANSI string and ANSI char now.
Excellent. So there's a question here about, if you don't have components and you're trying to move up to the latest version of Delphi, what can you do to replace components that you're completely missing? Well, the first thing I'd say is, what was the component doing for you in the first place? Because the chances are there is a built-in component that you can use to replace it in the first place. If it's a third-party component that was, and I've seen certainly over time, certainly projects that have been migrated from Delphi 5, 6, 7 kind of time frame, there seemed to be kind of a culture of how many third-party components can you get into your project at one time. I've seen ridiculous amounts of third-party components thrown into one project, and some of them were literally there just to do one control on the screen, and the whole kind of package was tied in. So do you need the third-party component package in the first place? Can you swap it out for something relatively easily? And if so, it'd be pretty straightforward to swap it over to a standard component. If it's something that is doing a specific job, if it's non-visual, then there's a number of different things that you can do to create even kind of like a mock class or a class factory in the background that is then not having to change your code, but then just plumb in something else in the background to deliver it through. So you can refactor your code around that way to work through that. If it's visual, then you could start looking at, again, is there an alternative that you could be using? And there's a lot of decent third-party components out there nowadays through the popular component vendors that can probably replace pretty much most things that you're after. And a lot of the components also nowadays are available directly to download into the IDE through Getit. So rather than having to set up, go find the components, download them, put them in place, put them in the library path, and all the kind of pain that used to go through getting components added in, you can now just open up Getit and find a lot of them and install them directly from there, and you're up and running. So the only thing to be kind of wary of is there's a couple of them that, like the Jedi components, that need to have the command line compiler to actually install and run through. So you won't be able to use those within the trial version, unfortunately. But most of them you can pick up and use quite happily. Al, Mary, anything you want to add in on that part?
I'll also add, for some of these missing components, if you happen to have the source code for that component, there's a good chance you can open up that source code in the current Delphi 10.4, build the package again, and then install the package again. A common one that comes up last week, someone asked about a component called TopGrid. So the good news, if you have the source code for something like TopGrid, I think it included source code with 3 separate packages, design package and runtime packages. You're able to open up that source code packages in Delphi 10.4, build, and then install those packages, and those components will get added into your Delphi 10.4 IDE.
Okay, Stephen here said he's been developing a multi-user application suite originally written in Delphi 1, uses the BDE extensively, considering and has 114 large paradox tables. The suite has been under continual development since then and is now built using 10.3. 10.4 runs well with a mix of Windows 7 and Windows 10 machines. Will Refind really help him move away from the BDE? So he has a number of find key, next, edit, post, and QB queries used. NoSQL queries are used. So yeah, the great thing, Stephen, really is that FireDAC was actually originally written to be a replacement directly for the BDE from a developer who was using the BDE, and that means it's by far the best database platform for moving off the BDE. I know certainly I went through a fair bit of pain originally when trying to move some Delphi 5 applications off when I was commercially developing off the BDE and into DB Express, and the problems of having unidirectional data sets and not being able to set the tables to be live query, for editing and so on. It was a real pain, but thankfully FireDAC solves all of that because it was written originally to be a direct replacement for it. So yeah, you should be on easy street, should we say, in terms of getting on and moving through. And the other thing I'd say is that having things like IB Lite, which is the free database version of InterBase, being able to kind of migrate your code directly over into some tables there, and then being able to offer the the ability to back up and restore the database and do some other stuff with the commercial version of InterBase as well. And also if you've got any sensitive data within those tables, then obviously that data should be encrypted at rest. If data isn't encrypted at rest, then if God forbid the machine gets stolen, that's something you'd have to normally in most distros kind of register back with kind of people like the Information Commissioner's Office or anybody else like that, because it's a potential data breach. So and that can lead to, I think it's 10% of the global company's turnover or something now in fines or something. So yeah, definitely I'd be looking to try and move off the Paradox tables and into something a little bit more secure. But there's certainly a migration path there that you can go, and if you need any further advice on that, then please feel free to drop any one of us an email through. So there's a question here about what kind of things does Refine not cover on migration. Mary, anything that you've kind of picked up that you haven't been able to do with Refine in terms of swapping component bits through?
Like I said, every once in a while, I do get a customer reporting some unique specific case that he or she sees with the BDE to FireDAC migration, and I just ask them to send me what they're seeing, and our FireDAC product manager, he takes this Refine utility pretty serious. So if there's something that the Refine utility doesn't find that we don't know about, let us know about it, and then he will add that into that regular expressions file and give it back to you for you to run again to make sure it does what it's supposed to do now. So we assume we've found everything that we need going from BDE to FireDAC in that FireDAC migrate BDE text file, that regular expression file, but it's quite possible there's some unique case out there we don't know about yet. So let us know what it is and we'll add it into that regular expressions file and ask you to rerun it to see if it fixes the specific issue you are having.
Okay. Keith here is saying he still occasionally uses Delphi 6 on a machine held together with tape. I'll tell you quite an honest story, Keith. I had a machine that it was an old Acer machine. I used to love it. It had a bit of a curved keyboard on it, which was one of those kind of very first ergonomic things built into a laptop. And that was an XP machine many years ago, and the hinges started going on that. One thing I definitely say is look at trying to use something like VMware. They have a converter that you can use to run on an old machine to rip the entire machine into a virtual machine image. And you can then take that virtual machine image and then boot it up on your modern machine, and obviously then create a shared directory, and you can then start moving code between kind of your modern environment and your old one pretty easily. That's probably kind of a tip that I'd have, because thankfully I had a backup of that machine, but it finally gave up the ghost and I wasn't able to kind of get back onto that anymore. But I had literally Delphi 5, Delphi 7, 2007, all kind of installed and set up and running on that machine with a number of old customer data bits. And definitely a top tip is to kind of convert it into a VM if you can, if it's that old.
All right, so I see a nice example from Glenn saying, he's got a Unicode item going on, trying to figure out how to convert string variables that were used as 1-byte binary buffers for serial communication. So for something like that, Glenn, send us a screenshot of sample code for what you have, and we should be able to suggest how to modify that code to make the Delphi compiler happy.
Peter's here asking, is there a utility to convert binary DFM forms to text DFM forms? and use with refined. Certainly, I know you can open them up in your current version and just mark them to save as text and then save them back down. That would certainly be one way to do it. It's something I've never had really to kind of go through and find. Do you guys know either, Mary? Al?
Yeah, you're correct. Those DFMs are binary files, so there is some intelligence built into that refined utility that it knows how to go into those binary form files and make the changes it needs. But as Stephen mentioned, yes, you can open up those DFM files in the Delphi editor to see the text to make any manual changes you need to make.
You can also open them up as well in like Notepad++ or even just Notepad as well, and you can see where any of the changes are made, or if there's specific properties that you're not seeing, you can find that as well in just any text editor.
That's correct. You know, if you're if one of those forms throws an error, like it's missing the T database because the BDE is not available, from the messages pane, you can right click on that error message, missing T database, right click on it, and then there's an option to say open it up in the editor. So it'll open up that DFM form in the editor as a text file, pointing to the location where that missing T database is, and then you can manually change it from a BDE T database to a FireDAC T FD connection, or whatever it needs.
So Keith here has asked us, refined take care of field references in the code of the original program. So I know one of the things you certainly can do with FireDAC is you can tell FireDAC to map different types to different things. So if you've got a T SQL timestamp or T timestamp or T date, you can map them to T date time and then just handle them in a uniform way through your code. So FireDAC's pretty good. If you actually just open up the FireDAC database component, you can set that there, and then that will apply to all components that connect into it. Or alternatively, if you only want to do it for specific components, then you can actually just set the mappings up on those specific components. So it's really flexible in terms of what you do with that. But that's pretty useful thing within FireDAC. So there's another question here. What tools do you advise for migrating code that contains lots of command types like size of, length, field char, move, char, pchar, right buffer? There's a whole list of them set through there. Mary, anything that you want to kind of advise on those two, on that one?
Well, those are some common types for possible Unicode changes, but as we mentioned, depending on how you're using strings and chars, you may or may not need to make any migration changes at all. And the compiler is smart enough that it'll throw an error or a warning on some line where it thinks some Unicode change might be needed. So I say let the compiler do the work and let it point out where it thinks a Unicode change is needed.
So there's a question from Martin here saying, migration question, I have a huge number of apps in Delphi 4. These use string types which do not convert to Unicode without finding all their definitions and changing types, print to ANSI print, and changing the matching functions from things like post, ABC, buff to ANSI post. There's a big list of basic functions that need to be changed, basically most of the string functions. Any tools to make this easier?
Again, I'll point out, just because your application is using millions of string or string types does not necessarily mean you have to make any Unicode changes. Again, it depends on how you're using those strings and chars in the application. So there is a utility called a parser or Unicode statistics tool that will list, I think it looks at 30 specific items or tokens in your applications for things like string, pchar, reads and writes as possible areas where Unicode changes are needed. But it's quite possible no Unicode changes are needed at all. Again, it depends on how you're using those strings and chars. So again, I say let the Delphi compiler do the heavy work to let you know where or if any Unicode changes are needed.
Okay, got a question here from Stephen saying, I still have to use Delphi 5 for one app because it has so many third-party components that are not released since then. Is there any way to get it to compile with 10.3 or 10.4? Well, the third-party components, the DCUs that they generate out, are going to be fixed for Delphi 5. So unless you've got the third-party components or the source code for them, if you've got the source code, obviously, as we said earlier, you can look to migrate those components one by one and get those moved across. Or the other thing to look at is, are there replacements that you can bring in to replace the ones that you've got there currently? And alternatively, are there specific things that you can swap it out for within 10.4 that would make sense? Certainly, if you've got third-party components that are being used for, calendar controls because they're much better than the original Delphi 5 ones, or anything else like that, then definitely, there's modern versions that you can swap out. And as I say before, you can probably use Refined with a custom script to do a good chunk of that lifting for you to get that moved. So that would be a good place to start. Mary, Al, any other questions that you can see that we've missed going down here? I'll give you guys just another minute or two. I know we're pretty much bang on time now, but if there's any last question quickly, then please do fire those through.
I think we covered them all, but in the follow-up replay, we'll post answers to all the questions just in case we missed anything.
Okay, so Mary, anything that you want to add?
Only that we are always available if you have questions or comments about migrating older applications to 10.4.
Yeah. So yeah, please feel free to kind of contact us through. It's just first name dot last name at Embarcadero.com for all of us. I think we're pretty much through the questions. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for the great Q&A session. A lot of really good questions in there. Please feel free to follow up with us or get in contact with your local sales rep. If you're looking to migrate and move off the older versions at the moment, we've just got back kind of the kind of amnesty kind of style promotion that's being run. So there's a chance to do an upgrade. Obviously, over the last few years, Embarcadero has shifted away from kind of the upgrade kind of approach to a subscription model. Basically, with the update subscription built in, you're getting years update subscription built in with any release now, which means you get all future updates that are released within that period of time, which is great. And it's allowed us to be a lot more flexible in terms of the delivery of the products. Last year, mid-range, we were able to kind of release within the same version, which meant there wasn't a binary breaking change, a 64-bit compiler for Android and for iOS, which is no mean feat. New compilers used to take about 18 months to be delivered into the product, and to deliver them within a point release without having to break all the third-party components and everything else like that, because traditionally sales needed to have the upgrade processes running through, has been a lot smoother for everybody, just to kind of keep current and to keep things moving forward. So great to see a lot of you kind of on the later versions already. If you're still looking to move up, then now really is the time. And there's a fantastic promotion running as well, with over $10,000, $12,000, $13,000 worth of third-party components in an upgrade package at the moment, which are great to kind of get moving in. Yeah, please reach out if you need any support or anything from us. From me, thank you very much. Al, Mary.
Right, thanks all for attending this. And as Mary said, I'll repeat, as you're doing the migration and you come across any error or strange warning message, you're not sure what it means, send us Embarcadero a screenshot of what you see or sample code, and we should be able to advise how to migrate or change the code to make the Delphi compiler happy.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
All right, thank you.